Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're going to be going over the divisional round. We're going to start by talking about the showdown slates on the Saturday. You have the KC game versus Houston, and then you have Detroit versus the Washington Commanders. Going to be a fun slate. You have the lowest total at 41.5 for the KC game, and then you have the highest total on the slate on the weekend, 55.5 for the other game. Going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to talk about these. How we're going to do this is we're going to talk about these individually as showdown slates, and then I'm going to cut them and release them as individual slates. So you will see those both. If you are watching them now, you obviously know that. So we will be putting those up. But I'll let Cam talk about some of the weather issues that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah. Well, on the Saturday ones, there shouldn't be any weather concerns. Kansas City looks like being on the afternoon on Saturday, it's going to miss the cold front that's going to hit the country this weekend. So, mid-30s, nothing really going to be impacting either team. And then highest total game, dome game, doesn't matter. Even if it's snowing outside, it's going to be putting up a lot of points. So very different slates on how we're going to approach it because Detroit, Washington, ton of spend-up options.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City, Houston's more of the mid-tier price guys, so it's just going to be having to figure out how we're going to dive between each one.
Okay, so now we will be transitioning over to the other. I'm going to share this tab instead, and we'll be transitioning over to the Detroit-Washington slate.
Yeah, this is the fun.
So if you're actually watching the Detroit-Washington video, we just did the Kansas City and Houston breakdown, but you can watch that in the full video or you can watch the individual video also. Let's talk about the away team here in Washington. Starting it off, get out of there. Talking about Terry McLaurin, 9,400. And there's like 5 pass catchers for this team.
Mm-hmm.
De'Ami Brown. And then you could even go to Crowder. You could go to Luke McCaffrey, Bates. I would say that to me, Crowder and Luke McCaffrey are the same play, so I'm not going to put them up there. But yeah, so those are our kind of guys that we're kind of talking about. Terry McLaurin is obviously number 1, though.
Yeah, and again, Jaden Daniels has just been going off lately, averaging nearly 30 points over his last 6 complete full games, minus the Week 18 where he didn't return for the second half. But yeah, he's been crushing it, and a lot of the times, other than 1 or 2 occasions, it's been Terry McLaurin being the main beneficiary, having those 20-plus point floor upside. But his floor as well has been incredible because he's been scoring touchdowns this year. He's got 14 on the year, which I really wish I had the stat available of most touchdowns caught by a rookie quarterback all time, because usually
right,
wide receiver ones and rookie quarterbacks don't correlate that well. Even in recent historical seasons like Keenan Allen, when Justin Herbert had his great rookie year, he wasn't catching touchdowns. I think he only had 5 or 6 that year, but he's getting yards at least. Well, Terry's gotten some yards. He's got the touchdowns. So, yeah, he's been incredible. Zach Ertz has been awesome as a red zone threat. He's had a little bit lower of a floor on certain weeks.
Right.
But he does have the touchdowns in certain games. Obviously caught the game winner against Atlanta to essentially knock them out once they lost in overtime in that game. Caught another touchdown against Dallas on the comeback to be able to play in this matchup because otherwise they would have been the other seed.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's been really solid for him as well. Olamide Zaccheaus has been the main beneficiary since
Noah Brown
went down for the year. But last week had a dud. He did play the snaps. He just wasn't really getting targeted or involved as much. But that broke a streak of 4 straight games that he had at least 4 targets. He had at least 50 yards in 3 straight games, and then he caught 2 touchdowns in one touchdown in the other. He's just one of those where tournament-ish play, that low confidence, but you're gonna have to be playing multiple of these lower tier guys.
Right, for sure.
So him, De'Ami Brown, who's crept up in price after his career day this past week. We called him out as the last guy in our wild card video, and he went 5 for 89 a score. So both of these guys, basically $400 between each other.
That's my bad.
No, you're all good.
I was trying to pull up snap counts, but
no,
here you go. My bad.
Yeah,
there you are.
De'Ami Brown, he missed a couple weeks due to an injury, but basically has had 5 opportunities every single week over the last 5 or 6 weeks. He hadn't been scoring touchdowns until this past week. Maybe it was positive regression. I don't know. But he's had at least a solid floor to where, if there's not a lot of value on a slate, something like this, he is definitely worth mentioning.
Yeah, 4,000 is reasonable. Actually, so we just talked about the KC slate. That slate's really easy to build on because the highest priced player is 10-6. Then you have Mahomes at 10 and 9-6 for Joe Mixon. Well, on this slate, it's a little bit more difficult because you
got 6 guys above 9,000.
Yeah, it's
really hard to even afford 3 of those guys.
Yes, and it's also who do you want and things like that. So we're gonna go over. We didn't talk about the Washington running backs, but disclaimer, we're fading them. So yeah, don't worry about it, guys.
Yeah, we always do our fades and must plays and contrarian away from each other, and then collab once we do this video in real time. And we were on board with just fade the Washington running backs, and it's mainly just because they're splitting 50-50 in terms of opportunities and snaps.
Yeah. It's not
pretty. At least has been more efficient, but he hasn't been really getting goal line work, and having to spend up for both of them. They're just in a weird price range that I just don't want to really attack this week.
Yeah. So going to the other side, now that we got through that, wide receivers and pass catchers, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, really good. Sam Laporta, 5,600, and then I guess Tim Patrick's probably the next guy up. So 3,600 for him. But this is the main guys you're going to look at. Then, of course, we'll talk about the running backs in a second. But Amon-Ra could be the guy. Jameson Williams could be the guy. Sam Laporta has been the guy recently. And his price has, come up, but not where I expected it to on a slate where, all these other guys are so highly priced. 5,600 feels kind of pedestrian.
Yeah, I love me some Sam Laporta this week. I'm going to be riding and dying with him in a lot of contests.
Yeah.
It starts with here being 5,600. His opportunity, his floor is just kind of completely flipped on his face. He wasn't getting any opportunities the first half of the season, wasn't scoring touchdowns, and all of a sudden he had a 2-touchdown game with less than 10 yards on Thanksgiving, and then all of a sudden really started to kind of come into stride. He's been double digits, basically one of the most consistent target floors on the team. I love him on the main slate. Definitely love him here as well. And then because there is so many guys to spend up on, he's like even captain viable to me.
Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree with that. That was something I was actually going to ask about because I don't know that there's a ton of people or a ton of players that are captain viable on the slate because you would have to spend up so much for the guys you actually want to be your captain.
Right.
There is a guy that we'll talk about in a minute that I think is interesting, but otherwise, these are our receivers. Amon-Ra. He's had a 19.4, 13 touchdowns on the year. We just talked about, on the other side, Terry McLaurin having 14. Well, 13 is definitely one of those great numbers. Also, he has 41 point upside. Another guy that at 10-2, I'd love to get to. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate, especially if you have to decide running backs, wide receivers, wide receivers.
That's tough. And even in my first look, it's not even the direction or game script that I was even thinking about.
Right.
But it just organically fit better, and so that's kind of why I went the route I did. It's really fun, and I even thought we're not going to talk about our tournament plays yet, but one that I thought was going to be your tournament play was Jameson Williams because of how his boom and how he's. I understand, but it's just because it being 9,000, nobody's going to want to play him right now. He's showing as less than or just right around 20% owned,
right,
which is really low on a showdown slate. And with him having the upside that he's had multiple games over 20 fantasy points, but he's also got the floor. Obviously, that's why it makes you nervous. But he's got 29, 24 and a half in must-win games.
I get it.
So I thought that was going to be your tournament play. I was a little surprised it wasn't. That doesn't mean that we're fading him or playing him at all. But yeah, he's one that you have to mention because of the upside he has with the 60-plus yard plays.
Yeah, and I did want to add one other player just real quick. It's Raymond because he's $1,200 and he's going to get one catch, maybe two, and that pays off. There's
no value on the slate, so you have to get down cheap to afford 3 of these guys and then possibly a 4th depending on which route you're trying to take. But yeah, he's a guy that was getting wide receiver 3 snaps, and then he went to IR with an injury. His first game back was this past week in a must-win game against Minnesota, and he only played 4 snaps, which was not a lot.
But they got him the ball.
He got a catch, and
he's a punt returner. So
he's a punt. Yeah, exactly. So you're just trying to find somebody to get you 2 points, so you can afford others. And so if he's the only guy down there, just let it rip.
I also like the fact that they had a week off. and the time off hopefully helps him out also. So that's kind of what I would be banking on with him. Otherwise, Tim Patrick's down here. He's been their number 3 receiver, and he's been fine. So if you want to go Tim Patrick at 3,600, he might be the lowest you go. But you just kind of need some value, and I think that Khalif Raymond makes some sense.
My problem with him is just he basically every game except for the ones he scored touchdowns in, he's been under 7 fantasy points. Yeah. So he just hasn't really even had much of a floor, really, even though he's been getting the consistent snaps. Obviously, Khalif Raymond went down in week 12, did not play week 13 through 17. Mm-hmm. That's mainly where Tim Patrick kicked up to the 70% of the snaps, and he really hasn't done anything from a production standpoint other than the games that he did score touchdowns, which he scored 2 in one game, 1 in the other.
Yeah, fair. No, I just think Tim Patrick being 3,600 is maybe some salary relief. Yeah. But otherwise, it's a tough slate for
if you had to rank, price doesn't matter between Zacchaeus, De'Ami Brown, and Tim Patrick. How would you rank those 3?
De'Ami Brown, Zacchaeus, Tim Patrick.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah. But I mean, it is what it is. But I just wanted to give some names that maybe you're going to be in those same boats as someone else. And if you go to Tim Patrick instead of a De'Ami Brown, I feel like other people are going to think the same way. Because Zacchaeus and De'Ami Brown have played better more recently, and recency bias is a big thing in betting sports. So I think that that's important. Talking about the running backs, though, talk about some recency bias. Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs had 4 touchdowns last time that he played a game, and we did not have him because we were hoping that they would throw it a little bit. Yeah. And
it looked great because his first 9 touches, he had like 9 yards. It was awesome. Then he had a 30-yard touchdown. I was like, okay.
We're good.
And then he scored again.
And again.
Again. It was just like, all right, well, it is what it is.
Minnesota can't stop the run.
Yeah. So, he had a big old 49 burger. He had at least 28 fantasy points in every game that David Montgomery didn't play, which shows you why he's going to be one of the highest draft picks in fantasy next year.
Right, for sure.
Even though David's going to be back. And maybe he has a little bit less of a role, but he's got 20 touchdowns on the year, 22 points a game, 10-6, somewhat affordable, even though there is a bunch of expensive pricing on this slate. Him being not the most expensive and not by a wide margin. It just depends on how you're gonna flock and how you're gonna treat David Montgomery coming back, because he was a full participant in practice, so he's ready to go. This isn't a
there's no key tag.
Yeah, this isn't a he might go. He's going to be limited. Yeah, he'll probably only get about 30% of snaps, but he's going to have 12, 13 carries, and it depends on if he scores 1 or 2 touchdowns or none.
Could have played if they played last week. Is what the best way to put it, I think. And so he's going to be even a week better than he would have been if he would have come back last week. So I just expect him to pick up where he left off, and that's 45 to 55% of the snaps, just depending on what kind of game we're playing. And I think. And we'll talk about game scripts right now because these 2 guys are the last 2 we'll talk about. Kickers and defenses, whatever. They're on the slate. They're important if you want to get to them. But game script wise, we both think Detroit's going to win. I have it 35 to 21. Detroit has a 32-point implied total. You have to get to them. We actually are straddling that number. I just think Detroit's the best team of late. Dave Montgomery's back. So I don't think they get worse. And if you're going to go on one side for the other side, Jaden Daniels, of course, is important. But Detroit's going to win.
They were the one that needed a rest because they had the first bye of the year at week 5. They had to play 14 straight weeks or 13 straight weeks of games, and they were absolutely battered defensively. That's why it gave me a little bit of concern with our Super Bowl pick, which we had them represent the NFC. And then they throttled Minnesota, and I was like, no, we're going to let it ride. But defensively, I believe they're going to be a little bit stronger. Aiden Hutchinson, don't think, even though that there was some optimism, maybe he could return in some limited role later in the postseason. I haven't heard anything to make it seem like he'd be back this week, unfortunately. But fantasy-wise, I don't see how Detroit doesn't score 30 in this game. So when we're talking about that, it just depends on if Washington is going to be able to play catch up and keep up because they are capable of doing that. It's a defense and good environment to do so.
Right, for sure.
That's just kind of how I say it. But my score was 30 to 20. Like you said, I'm going slightly under. 55 just seems like a lot. And most of the time when Detroit did have those high totals this year, it actually ended up being the under. namely one of the games was Tampa Bay and Detroit, which I think that one was like a 54-55 as well, and it ended up being a 37-point total. They had the yards, they just weren't scoring. Way back in week 3.
In week 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, week 2.
16-20.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a couple of those games that they were just really scoring low.
But the problem is, look at the scores.
Exactly.
Like, I can't go away from them, right? Like, you actually picked 30-20, and you picked a score that has not been hit in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I
I
don't know.
I'm different in that regard. But, yeah, kind of on a similar boat on this one. So, I'd say let's get to building some lines.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first on this one?
Well, I was going to say must plays, Jaden Daniels, Amon Ra. You had Jaden Daniels, I had Amon Ra. If I'm going to play a Washington player, I want Jaden Daniels.
Yes.
Fades, both Washington running backs. And then our contrarian tournament plays is both David Montgomery. You're right. Jameson Williams is always a tournament play. Always. Because he could pop off for 30 points, and that wouldn't surprise anybody. But I did think that I just stayed with the David Montgomery. I'm more comfortable with it.
I think he's very safe, but I just think it's one of those things that it depends on how people get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if everybody is going off and scoring fantasy points, that's not going to work out.
Yes.
Because I think he's probably got a ceiling of like 15, unless he scores 2 touchdowns. But at the same time, he
score
could
2 touchdowns.
So we'll just kind of see how it plays out. Yeah. Did you want to go first, or did you want me to?
I will go first.
Okay.
I'm not in love with my build, but because I didn't get Sam Laporta in it, so you're going to be like, whoa, wow.
Okay.
But I went Amon Ra at my captain. He was my must play. I went Jared Goff to pair David Montgomery. So, where is the rest of the? There. Okay. I didn't really need that many of them. I just need this guy. I'm playing a 5-1.
Okay.
With Jaden Daniels as the quarterback. $5,000 down here to Jake Bates. And then my last guy in is going to be Raymond. So 5-1, I'm looking at it in the way that these are the guys that are going to – I'm going to say that even if Jameer gets him to the goal line, Dave Montgomery's getting him in, and Amon Ra is going to score some touchdowns. Jared Goff is going to at least throw 3 passes to Raymond, Bates, and then rushing upside, Jaden Daniels. We're not going to get any passing touchdowns. It's going to be running.
Okay.
Cool.
Sweet. Yeah. Being able to afford, 3 of them, get the mid-tier tournament play, I think is completely in the realm of things. I did say in the other Showdown breakdown that I don't know if I want to be getting into a 2 to 3 build on any of the Showdowns.
Right.
But if there was one that I wanted to do that, it's this game.
For sure.
Because I want to have exposure to a lot of these guys that you really just – it's one thing to take one stand, but when you have to take 3 stands.
On the same – yeah.
Yeah,
no, there's
hard.
no way.
So
there's no way to do it.
I think you're going to like my build a lot, actually.
Oh, perfect.
So
I like that.
My thing is I didn't expect this kind of a build.
Okay.
But we're going mid-tier captain, and we're going with Sam Laporta at my captain.
Interesting. I like it. I do like it.
Okay. Both quarterbacks.
Okay.
Both wide receiver ones.
Okay.
And last guy in is your last guy in.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, I do like that a lot.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes me nervous about it is that I really like Detroit's running backs.
So the only thing we did different is I had Bates and Montgomery. You have McLaurin and Laporta, but you have Laporta at captain.
Yep.
Cool. I'm all about it. I love it. I think that
But again, I don't want to just play one build and just like completely fade Detroit's running backs because they have combined for 33 touchdowns this year. So that's very, very nerve-wracking for a team that's going to score 30 points. Washington's actually worse against the run than they are the pass. So
right.
I'd like to find a way to get to one or the other, but this lineup just made too much organic sense when I was trying to find a way to do a Sam Laporta captain build.
There's a line that I tried to make, and I just wish. Can you take a 0? You can't, right?
I think it's in the row.
Is it a thing? Okay, I want to show you my line then.
Shane Zylstra?
No, sure. Well, I don't care. Whoever down there, because remember you said that contrarian play should have been Jameson Williams. Well, there he is, right?
Right.
Jared Goff, and then both Jaden, McLaurin, Laporta,
and then you got 700,
and then a 0. And I don't know if this works. I mean, I like it, but I don't know if it works because you just need so much upside out of Jameson Williams. But at the same time, it's a hard slate. So you could come down here and pick one of you guys down that maybe touches the ball once.
My personal opinion is, and for what it's worth, and Brock Wright is somebody that you've brought up before on a Showdown. Say, well, he's I think $2,000, and he doesn't get the work. He just has snaps, or he's 1,600. I don't think I'd go there. But Shane Zylstra has had 8-9 snaps. He occasionally plays. We're just looking for guys that maybe might sniff a catch. Allen Robinson had a catch this past week for 21 yards.
Yeah.
Just spitballing. I don't know if I would do a minimum price with a mid-tier captain like with
for
Sam Laporta. But if you're doing an expensive captain with one of the guys 9,000 and above, I think it's completely fine and in play. But you got to nail the captain. That's kind of what I would say.
Yeah, and then the other thing is I could always go down from Terry, but do I want to constantly to non-stack Jane Daniels? Because then I get 2,500. I don't even know what 2,500 is. Jamison Crowder, nothing. So yeah, it wouldn't even be worth it. But just talking about it,
Yeah, there's absolutely zero value on this slate. I kind of wish that they did what they did to the main slate, and just completely be like, why the hell is Amon-Ra $9,000? Kind of those kinds of fun builds,
right?
But since they didn't, I think it's just one of those things where that's why I think it's a zeros in play, because you're able to afford a expensive captain and 3 other guys that are in that range.
For sure. And of course it's very tournament-y, but if that's how you win money. So I think that this slate is a lot of fun, but like we said, it's a massive total. You have to get the right guys in these 9,000 range. So
you might be on fire for all 6 guys and might not cash.
Yeah, not cash. Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those
crazy
one of those slates.
But let me stop sharing. As we said earlier, we're going to be releasing these into 2 videos and a main video, but we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We hope that y'all enjoyed the video. We have a lot of stuff coming up. Draft season will be happening after all this. We already started breaking it down. Dustin's on transfers, so he will have some ideas of all the transfers going on. Cam, of course, will be getting us ready for after the season and talking about the outlook for all these teams. So there's a lot of fun stuff happening, but let's kill divisional weekend and hopefully make some money.
Exactly.
And go on from there.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We did a main slate. Please check that out. Also, there's Sunday showdowns that we're going to be breaking down as well. Get ready for it all. We like to play everything.
Yeah.
A lot of people just want to cover the main and just give you 150 lines and how you're going to manipulate ownership. Well, we're not there yet. We don't have an optimizer. We're hand building. That's how most of y'all do it. And so instead of doing just a bunch of hand builds on one single contest, we're like, all right, I want here. I want to play everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what we like to do. And so hopefully you guys have enjoyment doing that. And again, let's kill it this weekend.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, we want to give you the core and the ideas that we're thinking, and then allow y'all to go and be like, well, I'd rather play, the De'Ami Brown, Zacchaeus, Tim Patrick idea, just switching up one guy and being like, okay, this is making me more different and stuff like that. So we're giving you the idea and how we're thinking about building, and then hopefully y'all are adjusting just a tad bit to make your line more tournament-y, and that's how you win money.
Right.
So we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, though, and we will see you on the next one.